Don't forget, ko-fi.com/stopwritingalone is a real simple way to show your support for what's going on here week after week. Hi, everyone. This is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here in the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. Hey, everybody. You may remember back in, I guess it was maybe January, I might have not mentioned it on the podcast till February, that I was on this quest to find books on the craft of writing written by writers of color. I realized that my shelves were filled with all of these great, I have a problem with collecting books on writing. So I have a bunch of books on writing, and I just started to notice as I got to know who the people were behind these books, that I was getting information from mostly white women, but if I were stepping off the beaten path, it would be white men as well. And I was like, wait, I feel like maybe I'm not getting the full story here. So I started asking. I asked here on the podcast, I asked in the Stop Writing Alone Facebook community, I asked the happy campers, I was like, if you guys know of any books that you may have, or writing instructors that you may know about that are out and about, let me know. I just want to diversify my sort of self-made education here, and almost in step with that, at the same time, I have a masterclass subscription. I started, I've talked about that a couple of times. All of a sudden, there were a couple of new teachers in writing, and I was like, okay, here we go. The first writer I noticed was Walter Mosley came on a masterclass, and then Amy Tan came on, and now I'm steeped in N.K. Jemison's masterclass, and it's just all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, okay, this is fantastic. Alongside that, I also attended virtually the AWP conference, Association of Writers and Publishers. Or writing programs. Oh man, I should look that up before I say it. Anyway, that's terrible. The AWP conference that happened in beginning of March had a bookshop associated with it, and you can still look that up if you go to bookshop.org and you just look for the AWP bookshop. It's like a rolling bookshop that they have where they add the books of members, but particularly for the conference, they had lots of different shelves containing the books of people who were giving talks at the conference. And I just did a big book haul one day from there, not knowing the authors at the time, because it was before I'd even attended all of the different panels that were available. But I did grab two books that were really enticing to me, as I recognize that I have this obsession with all things education and how we learn things and how things are taught. And so these two books that sort of bounced out at me right away were Craft in the Real World by Matthew Solisis. I hope I'm not saying that wrong. I will put a link in the show notes. In fact, I'll put a link to the AWP bookshop so that you can get them there. And also the Anti-Racist Writing Workshop, How to Decolonize the Creative Classroom by Felicia Rose Chavez. And both of these appealed to me because, of course, with the work with Stop Writing Alone, I do want to engage writing community and all different types of communication around our writing. So that does involve getting to a point where we can have writing workshops. Right now, the Stop Writing Alone Happy Campers Club that went on in the spring, this is our final week. We had a May-April session, and every single Thursday we had a critique meeting, but it wasn't a writing workshop. It was basically everybody got a partner for the week, and they exchanged, and I should say we exchanged our writing to our partners, and then kind of did like, I don't even think it's called a workshop at that point because it's like a one-on-one, but sometimes there were trios where we would give critique back to our partners. But I very much modeled at least the rules of how we should engage in the critique conversation on the writing workshop model that I was taught, which comes from a friend of mine who went to traditional creative writing college courses. So it's very much steeped in the tradition of the writing workshop, which finds its origins in the Iowa writing program that kind of birthed all of the MFAs. And that is what is being criticized in both of these books. I will be completely honest with you guys. These books are new to me. I have read the preface and forward and chapter 1 of each of these books. That is all. That's why I'm not here this week to talk to you and teach you anything new or earth-shattering about what we should be doing. But what I do want to say is, based on what I'm reading already, is that these are things that need to be in our conversation, in our thoughts about our writing, how we approach it, and how we discuss it when we're in community. Lots of times I'm here in the podcast talking about how we approach writing as individuals or, sharing our writing with community. But this is the Stop Writing Alone podcast. And the end game here for me is essentially either for us to join in writing community together with the various events that I provide, or for you to go out and find or create a writing community of your own. I think right now is a great time to re-examine the model when you have, right on my desk here, 2 different books that are calling into question the things that we have held as the epitome of what a writing workshop should look like. And you may be asking, but Nicole, why? Why would I even do that if everybody has been saying that this is what you do? And I have given this advice on this podcast before about how we should, come prepared. We read each other's work. We make our notes on the work itself, and then when we come face to face with each other, we follow the rule of silence. And as I said, I've gotten that from my friend that taught me in my first writing workshop, but I also took it from Ursula K. Le Guin's book, Steering the Craft, which is all about writing, and she has a whole section on the peer review process. So again, steeped in the tradition of the MFA, the Writers Workshop that has been around since the early 20th century. So it's antiquated, and here's why. I want to read for you from, this is like, we just come in right away, from the preface of Craft in the Real World, Rethinking Fiction Writing and Workshopping. This is the Matthew Solisis book. And he says, this first page of the preface: over a decade ago, I sat silently at an MFA workshop while mostly white writers discussed my race. I had decided not to name the race of any character, Asian American or otherwise, but the workshop demanded that the story inform the reader if my characters were, like me, people of color. A common assumption lies behind this phenomenon, that no mention of race is supposed to mean a character is white. I didn't have to ask why white writers in the room never identified the race of their white characters. I already knew why. They believed that white is literature's default. I just couldn't say so. So, if this is not a fact that is already common to you or known to you, let me just state, like, these are the facts. If you don't distinguish, at this point in history, if you don't distinguish the race of a character, majority of readers are going to assume the character is white. We saw this play out publicly on an enormous global stage when the Harry Potter franchise expanded onto the stage. And when the directors and the people who were putting together the production of The Cursed Child made the decision to cast a black woman in the role of Hermione, a grown-up Hermione. And the fan base was like, wait, what are you talking about? Hermione isn't black. How could this happen? I've read all the books. I know who she is. I've seen all the movies. This is not who she is. And J.K. Rowling said, but I never said what her race was. You simply assumed. And, we can say, like, did she really intend that or not? But the facts are the facts. She never stated it. And so that's not like going against the canon if they did this casting. But right there was, for many people, I think the first time that they recognized, like, she didn't say that. Why did I just think she was white all along? And so I just want to continue, and I won't read the whole book to you. But right directly underneath that, Solisis continues, and I think this is where we really drive this point home of why this is a really important conversation to have. He says, to name or not name a character's race is a matter of craft. To consider a character to be white, unless stated otherwise, is a matter of craft. Since this is a craft book, let's explore what exactly is at stake for the craft of fiction here. There are 3 possibilities. Number 1, if fiction dictates that a writer identify only the race of non-white characters, then craft is a tool used to normalize whiteness. Number 2, if race is a factor only in stories with characters of color, then craft must be different for fiction with characters of color than it is for fiction with white characters. Number 3, otherwise, if any mention of race affects a story, then, like setting, race must be a part of any craft discussion. And it's that last point that I think is really what drove me to this episode of saying, well, we got to talk about race then, because I really do believe that this is a salient point, that if this is a part of craft, and how could it not be? If it is a choice, then it is something that we need to discuss when we have our new characters. And he further explains that if we don't have these discussions, if we're not making these conscious choices about our characters, then we're doing them unconsciously, and we should really be examining why we are going in one direction or another. You wouldn't just sort of let any old setting happen to a story. Your setting tells part of the story. Your character does as well. And we make these decisions about so many different pieces of our characters and make them clear to the reader. But oftentimes we don't do the same when it comes to ethnicity and race. And the argument being, or one of the arguments, I should say, being raised in Felicia Rose Chavez's book, The Anti-Racist Writing Workshop, is that when she went through her, her education and through the various creative writing programs, the design of it right now was to sort of almost cancel out mentions of ethnicity. She mentions here on one page, and I believe this is in chapter 1 here. She says she's talking about all the various anxieties that she was coping with through the program as someone with brown skin. She said, anxiety when a white female professor uses a black pen to cross out references to ethnicity in my personal essay, noting in the margins, quote, you don't need to make it a race thing. And so it's a really interesting, phrasing to put up against the notes that Solisis brings up in his book, because his argument is that, mentioning race and mentioning ethnicity is a part of the craft. And yet here is Chavez in a program where she's supposed to be learning about her craft and being criticized for adding this element, which adds, more authenticity to her writing. So I'm just really getting fascinated by this entire conversation. I think it is really important that it becomes part of the discussion when perhaps it hasn't been before. And if it has been for you, that's wonderful. And I don't know that if it has or hasn't been for me, I'm just reading this thinking like, I don't know that that's been in my conversation as precisely as I would be talking about other things. And then to bring this all back to the masterclass that I'm watching now, even though I spent another episode talking all about masterclass, the N.K. Jemisin, I'm up to a lesson where she's talking about character development, and she parallels it to, she creates a pyramid of sort of essential things that we need to have. And her base of her pyramid, the biggest piece is demographics. And she even mentions in there, this is your time to really, settle on what is the race of your character? What does that mean? Where does their culture, and how does their culture dictate who they are in the world that you've created? Because of course NK, creates these fantastic worlds that are, in and of themselves, wonderful stories. Just the setting is a story in and of itself. So yeah, I feel like it just keeps coming up. I think it's a really, really important conversation to have as writers, as we are developing our craft and as we are developing our stories, to bring this into that conversation of not only what did you choose, but why, kind of like we do with our setting. Why is my story happening here? Where is it happening? Why is it happening there? And oftentimes it's because it's the backdrop that we need for our character's story arc to, be fully lived. It's, I don't know, just really, really fascinating stuff. And I'm very much in beginner's mind mode. I'm just really learning and spitballing different ideas I have. So, I hope to return to this topic after I've completed reading these books. And also, you not just hearing from me. I did want to announce, probably not next week. Well, no, not in the next couple of weeks, but in the next couple of weeks, I am going to start getting back into the groove of conducting interviews for this podcast. I very much took an interview sort of hiatus during the hustle and bustle of this quarantine life. It has been enough to keep my family as quiet as humanly possible when it is just me recording, when I have been on, the very many calls with the Happy Campers Club and other programs that I'm involved in. So I was consciously taking time off from conducting interviews while that was all going on. But I feel like we're getting near the end of that. And I am sort of sick of just hearing my voice. I would like to hear more people on the Stop Writing Alone podcast. So yeah, just wanted to give you something to look forward to, that I'm going to start reaching out for interviews. If you are interested in being on the Stop Writing Alone podcast, please reach out. Like I said, I'm building my calendar now for times to interview. I do have a bunch of people that I do hope to interview very soon, but that does not mean that there is not room for you. And I guess that is all for this week, except for the very special announcement. If you did not already receive the email, perhaps you're not on the Stop Writing Alone email list yet. If not, please just sign up. I don't send emails that often. I'm not going to load your inbox. And if you do sign up, you would get announcements like who is our special guest for the writing prompt party happening this Friday. It is the wonderful Mr. Brian Mooney, the creator of all things Storymatic. If you've been following along on all of the writing prompt tools that I share on YouTube, and I've also shared them here on the podcast. And almost a year ago, exactly, in episode 65, I interviewed Brian Mooney. He is just an amazing creative. He's a writer, a teacher, and through his teaching of writing, he started to create all of these different writing prompt tools that he was using in his classroom. And then it turned into a product, because mostly coming from the students saying, can I have, a version of this for myself? So he started to produce them and then sell them. And I honestly do love all of the Storymatic products, because I can now say that I have them all. I have Storymatic Classic. I have Rememory, which is for, writing memories or sharing memories and creative nonfiction writing. I have Synapsis, which is a very cool game that is kind of rides the line of writing prompt and improv. It's just really cool. And I just got Storymatic Kids, so I can start playing and creating with my son, but also use it for myself. I mean, let's be honest, I'm going to use it for me too. In fact, the Happy Campers did a writing prompt party, I think it was last week, with the Storymatic Kids, and we got some fun stories out of it. So, I will put the link to Storymatic Studios in the show notes so you can check out all of those games. But yeah, please, if you can show up on this Friday, April 30th at 7 p.m., sign up for the Friday Night Writes email list, which is, like a list within a list for Stop Writing Alone, so that you get the Zoom link. And perhaps you can write with us. If you hear this too late, then you should be able to find it right on the NV Rivera YouTube channel, because after we record on Friday, I will be making sure that it's all ready to go and publishing on the YouTube channel. But that's really it. That is all I've got. I just want to plant seeds of thinking about working the writing workshop, thinking about race in our writing and how it is a choice, whether we're doing it consciously or not, and what are the implications of those choices that we're making, and just thinking about it for a bit, and perhaps engaging in conversation with fellow writers about those choices and how we can make them moving forward. I hope to learn more as I keep moving forward. And that is all. Happy writing. Have a wonderful week. I will talk to you next week. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page, or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter, where I'm at NV_Rivera, to find links to our email newsletter. Recording, hosting, editing, producing. It's so much work. Disaster has struck. I finished my coffee. Tell me coffee is coming. ko-fi.com/stop writing alone.